Yeah, what I like to do is vary them so that they're not the same question. So,
Wynn of the League of Women Voters of Edina, and welcome to the Candidate Forum for Edina School Board tonight. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan, volunteer organization that encourages citizens to participate in government. And while we as a league do studies and take positions on issues, we do not endorse or support political parties or candidates. The views expressed in this forum are those of the candidates, not those of the League of Women Voters, and sponsorship of this forum is not an endorsement by the sponsor of any candidate. I would like to introduce our moderator for the night, Adi Wickstrom. Adi is from the League of Women Voters in the White Bear Lake area. Adi.
thank you, Suzanne. Before we get started, I'd like everyone to get out your cell phone and turn it off or to vibrate, please. I don't want to hear any phones during the forum. Also, I'd like to remind you that no pictures or audio or video recording will be allowed during the forum. Thank you for obeying that. The purpose of this evening's forum is to provide an opportunity to hear the candidates discuss the issues that are important to you face to face. We will try to cover as many issues as possible in the time we have. If your issues are not addressed, feel free to contact the candidates directly. All candidates who filed for office and have not withdrawn were invited to this forum. I'd now like to explain the rules and format of tonight's forum. The candidates have drawn numbers to determine the order of their opening statements. After those statements, we will rotate the starting position for each question. Each candidate will have 1 minute to make their opening statement and 1.5 minutes to answer questions sent out in advance. The candidates will then have 1 minute to answer the written questions submitted by the audience. Following the questions, the candidates will have 1 minute each to make a closing statement in the reverse order of the opening statements. A league member will act as a timer and will show cards at 30 seconds and stop. Would you please hold up the cards so everyone knows where they are? Thank you. Questions from the audience must be written and handed to a volunteer who is wearing an LWV button. Please write legibly. Questions must be addressed to all candidates and must stick to the issues. Personal attacks will not be allowed. The questions will be asked by the moderator. LWV Edina determines which questions will be asked and will attempt in good faith to cover areas expressed by the audience. Similar questions may be combined. Please hold your applause until the end of the forum, and all written questions will become the property of LWV Edina. Now I would like to introduce your candidates for school board. On election day, voters may vote for up to 3. The candidates are Sarah Patzloff, Lenny Wallen-Friedman, Jason Berger, and Kathy Sella. Ben Ryder's name will be on the ballot, but he is not actively campaigning. And now we will start with our opening statements. And Ms. Patzloff, would you please begin 1 minute each?
Thank you. First, thank you to the League of Women Voters for coordinating this event, and thanks to my fellow candidates for being here tonight. 2023, that is the year that my youngest child will graduate from Edina High School. As you can see, I have a long road ahead of me, and that's one of the reasons that I'm running for school board. My husband and I, Paul Patzloff, who happens to be an Edina East graduate, moved to Edina 11 years ago for the sake of our future children at that time. We now have 2 kids, Lainey and Macklin, who are at Highlands Elementary. One of them is in CP, the Choice Program, and our other child is in the Neighborhood Program. This is our neighborhood school. I want our schools to be as good in 2023 as they are today, and I don't think that's going to be an easy task. I've been involved with several district-wide organizations, from Parent Communication Network to Parent Leadership Council, Community Education Services Board, and other organizations, and have come to see that it takes a well-informed and balanced board.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, Mr. Wallen-Friedman.
I too want to thank the League of Women Voters and my colleagues for coming to this debate. I'm running for school board because I care about education, and I want to be involved at the board level for decisions that affect the education of our students. I too am a parent in Edina. I have 2 children that graduated from Edina High School, and then I have another child that's in 3rd grade. I have a long history of volunteering in Edina. I have coached baseball, soccer. I volunteered with the PTO and with Scouts as a treasurer. And my wife and I have hosted 5 different interns that work over at Normandale Elementary. 10 years ago, I wanted to get more involved in the school district, and so I joined the school finance board. I've worked on that committee ever since then, working with the district and the school board on financial and facilities-related issues. I want to continue my work with the community to better the opportunities for our kids, and I want to do that by serving on the Edina School Board. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Berger?
Want to thank not only the league, but also for the fine audience that showed up this evening. I'm running for the school board because our family owes a great deal to the district. Our daughter, this doesn't get talked about a lot, I'm not sure how many people are aware, but our daughter has received services through the special ed program at Cornelia since birth. And it's a phenomenal level of services, and we're really happy with the teachers and the paraprofessionals that we've gotten to know through that. And if it's possible that I can serve on the board as a way of giving something back to the district, it would be my honor to do so. In my professional life, I'm what's called a risk manager. I work with public and private companies and agencies, some school boards. We look at, determine what their vulnerabilities are, what we can do to make positive change, and bring them on through a difficult process. Also, I've been a volunteer lobbyist for the United Mitochondrial Disease Foundation, and I'm, with my wife, a business owner. And I believe these skills would be a positive contribution to the board at this time.
Okay. And Ms. Ella?
Let me add my thanks to the league as well for sponsoring this forum tonight. I'm running for re-election to the Edina School Board for the same reasons I ran 4 years ago. I am passionate about education. I believe that an excellent education is the most important thing a community gives to its citizens. With 4 children, this is the 23rd consecutive year that I have had at least one child in the Edina school system. I have volunteered in the district at all levels and in many capacity over those 23 years, from kindergarten welcome night to the senior party. Before joining the board, I chaired the site councils at both Countryside and Valley View and served as president of the parent council at the high school. I'm also an active member of the wider Edina community, volunteering with both athletic and civic groups. I practiced law for 17 years and have many years of service on nonprofit boards, and these experiences have given me the financial management and planning skills our school board needs. As a member of this board, I have spent the last 4 years using those skills as we have worked hard, making tough decisions to keep our district financially healthy and fiscally responsible while continuing to offer.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll move on to the answers to a question that was sent out in advance. Each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to respond. There has been a lot of discussion about what is needed to make our students competitive in the 21st century. Looking at Edina schools, what areas are ripe for innovation? And Mr. Wallen-Friedman will start this question.
Thank you. The area that's ripe for innovation is, in my perspective, the classroom itself. Every day technology changes. We get new ways of getting information, we get a lot more information, and we get new ways of presenting information. If we can incorporate that technology, and we have started to, if we can incorporate that effectively into the classroom, we'll be able to change the way that we provide education. Now, as I said, the district has already started to use technology. There are interactive whiteboards or smart boards, depends on who you talk to. There are e-readers being used in classes. There's Moodle. There are all sorts of technology. There's hybrid learning. And those are all things that are currently in the classroom. For example, some of the teachers are already using smart boards. And I would tell everybody, go take a look. It's just amazing to see what the teachers can do with these smart boards. In the high school, we're able to advance critical thinking because the teachers are able to take lectures, put them online. The students watch the lectures online. They come to the classroom. They come to the classroom for discussion. They don't come to the classroom to be lectured to. This is an amazing feature, and this is happening today. So we're just at the beginning. My son was a senior a year and a half ago. He had almost none of that available to him. If you ask me to predict what we're going to have in 2 years, it just isn't possible. But we do need to pass the technology referendum because that will give the district the funds to be able to continue to innovate. The district will be able to research and put new technology in.
Thank you. Mr. Berger?
This 21st century education piece has been a part of my campaign from the beginning. It's something I've talked to probably a couple of hundred parents about. There is some apprehension on this. It's a great deal of change to absorb. The internet, this global connectedness, has swept through a number of sectors of our society, everything having to do with the transmission of content. It's media, publishing, music, all of these things have been disruptive changes, and it's going to have the same sort of effect on education in certain ways. But there's a silver lining to the dark cloud. The same forces that bring our kids within competition with kids from all over the world will also hold the seeds to providing education, a better education at a lower cost. And apart from the hardware challenges, a lot of people think about the servers that have to be bought and that sort of thing. Really, I think from my perspective, usually in these sorts of situations, it's an organizational challenge. That really what the schools will have to be able to do is have more flexibility. The administrators and teachers will have to be able to connect and work with instructors from all over the world, different resources that they haven't had to work with before. There will also be, have to allow for experimentation and failure, and be able to suspend some of the red tape, some of the rules and regulations that come with a large public school. And so these are the challenges, and I think I have the skill set to meet those challenges. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Ella?
I was really struck by the quotation from the Knowledge Works Foundation that Dr. Dressen used in his presentation tonight. If you think the future will require better schools, you're wrong. The future of education calls for entirely different learning environments. I think that observation tells us that all areas should be ripe for innovation. Our schools must evolve into those entirely new learning environments. We need to look at flexible learning spaces. In the future, our students will not be sitting in classrooms with 30 desks arranged in 5 orderly rows. Students need to be able to meet in flexible groupings to hear large lectures or work in small groups. We need to continue to develop the technology infrastructure and support that students and staff need so they can use their personal computing devices anywhere, anytime in all our buildings, and be able to access the district resources from home or in a hotel room during a weekend tournament or a college visit. We need to continue to develop classes that use technology to expand our students' capability to learn in different ways, not only from our own excellent teachers, but from the wider community. And we must continue to develop new strategies and communication methods to make families and our community our partners in these innovations. We must do what we do so well here in Edina, create these new learning environments, but in the Edina tradition of excellence.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Petzloff?
Thank you. To tag on actually to a lot of what you've heard my fellow candidates talk about, is one area I think is utilizing video. And taking teaching beyond the classroom. This can be done in different ways. There's services like United Streaming that offer digital content to the classroom, working together literally across the globe via webcam to learn new skills, and also accessing podcasts that our own teachers have created. We have a great opportunity to allow learning to happen anywhere and anytime, not just in the confines of the classroom. I've seen this in action in my daughter's classroom. Mark Wallace has created podcasts that we can watch online to help us better understand, not only for our daughter, but for the parents. I don't always remember what a segment in a line is, and I can go online and watch him literally step by step explain a process that my child is learning in the classroom, with video and him talking over what he's literally showing us online. This can also be done in what is called the flipped classroom, which I know Lenny referred to, and that's where students watch a lecture at home before coming to the classroom so that they can take on difficult problems, work in small groups, communicate, talk to each other about what they've heard at home, and use class time to actually do the work. I think technology is a huge tool that we need to get our hands around and use in the classroom, and we need to make it work in the tradition of Edina's excellence for the better learning of our students.
Thank you. Okay, now we will ask questions that were submitted by the audience. And Mr. Berger, you will start with this question. What will you do to challenge the state legislators to release allotted school funds on time? Hint, working quietly and with lobbyists will not do it. Oh. That's what it says.
I yield the balance of my time. No, I think we can step back from that and just look at the situation and say, what a sad thing that had to happen. I mean, they cannot get their act together enough to be able to send the funding in, and so they use an accounting gimmick to basically to balance the budget. And the obvious answer to this is that we have to reach into the reserve. And if there's some sort of possibility of an emergency levy or an assessment, that might be an issue, but I do have some experience in lobbying, and even though the answer was excluded, it would be something that would be a pleasure for me to be able to do and try to talk to some of the legislators and correct the situation.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Sella?
Well, if working quietly and lobbying isn't going to work, then I think we need to be a lot louder, and I think we need to get the community together. I think we need to work with other school districts, and parents, communities, and school districts need to work together and talk with one voice at the legislature and say this is affecting all our children when you hold back the money, and we all demand that you give us a better answer and a better solution. And there are a lot more of us than there are of our state legislators. So if we all speak with one voice, I would like to think that they would hear.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Patzloff?
A shift like this financially is difficult for any district. I will say that as Edina, we are lucky because of our incredible ratings and bond ratings that we can borrow money at a much cheaper rate than other school districts. But the bottom line is, how do we change this? As a school board, we can't do this as an individual body, but working with the community and with parents and sending that message to the state legislature that shifting our money is not fair. We have to go borrow that money that takes money out of our students' classrooms, and we need to collectively tell them that this is not how we want to continue to receive our funds.
Okay. Mr. Wallen-Friedman?
Going last, all the good ideas are taken, but I would, so all I'm telling is everybody go out and spend money and stimulate the economy. In the absence of everybody doing that, I agree with Sarah that the school board members, it's not really what we do as a school board member to go out and lobby the legislature. The school board has a different function. Now, the community as a whole, I think, is a very strong education-backed community, and the community as a whole needs to stand up and go to the legislature. It needs to go to its representatives and say, this doesn't work. We need to have adequate school funding, that your shift causes us to borrow money, and that costs us money, so it becomes a reduction. Now, there was a slight increase in the per pupil to cover the interest, but we should get rid of the shift.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the next question now. And Ms. Sella, you will start this one. How do you see your role as guardian of our money in negotiations with teachers' union representatives?
Well, the school board is guardian, a fiscal guardian of the money for the entire school district, and that is one of our main responsibilities, to be good fiscal stewards of the money. I don't think that we have a different relationship when we deal with the unions than we deal with any other entity that we deal with, whether we're having contracts with vendors or other bargaining units. We need to be strong fiscal managers, and I think that we have, over the last 4 years, certainly done that. We've been careful stewards of our money. We're one of the only 3 out of all the school districts in the state of Minnesota that still have a AAA credit rating. 8 out of the last 9 years have won the Department of Education Financial Management Award, and we try to, at all times, be careful stewards of the money.
Okay, thank you. Is that somebody's phone? Okay. Everyone, please make sure your phones are off. Okay, Ms. Patzloff, would you like me to reread the question, or did you have it?
I know. The question was in regard to being a guardian of the dollars when negotiating with
That's
our
right.
teachers, correct?
That's right.
The reality is that 85% of our budget is going to be, has been, on salaries and benefits. So it is a part of the job looking at how those dollars get spent. I think from a school board perspective, we do have to look at what the bottom line is, to me, is what's best for the students, what is going to make a difference in the classroom, and there has to be a balance. The teachers are what is teaching our students in the classroom, but we all have to figure out how to make the dollars work. The dollars are limited. 70% comes from the state based on the formula. We don't have a say in that. Luckily, we live in a district like Edina where we have a lot of we have great passage on our levies, and we get about 25% of our funds from that. And that we have local control over. But when it comes to being a guardian, that is something that in my professional background, I've done a lot of negotiating, and I will be passionate about negotiating for the benefit of our students and being a guardian of those dollars.
Thank you. Mr. Wallen-Friedman?
Fiscal responsibility is something that I believe is incredibly important. I have a finance degree, a minor in economics. I've been on the finance committee. I've raised questions with the district about when they are trying to set their levy as to whether they could do more with less. And so I definitely believe we need to monitor our fiscal expenditures. But we have to remember that we are a partnership with our teachers. And we need to to bring in good teachers. We need to retain those teachers once we're here. And if all we focus on is cutting, then we may be eliminating a source that's working very well with our students right now. We have good students, good parents, good community, good teacher. We need to be fiscally responsible, but fiscally smart.
Thank you. Mr. Berger?
We're drawn from this community to represent it and balance the interests of the parents and the teachers and and the goal is that we seek the best teachers we can find, and largely we have done that. We have a reputation for that. We've been successful. I believe that the next 10 years will not be like the last 50, unfortunately. The level of debt that we have accumulated in this country is almost beyond the frame of human comprehension. It will be pushed down from the federal government through the state to the local municipalities and school boards. So we're going to have, it's going to be a tremendous challenge. The cuts that we had seen in the past, the Berg process had gotten us between $2 and $3 million in cuts out of budgets that were $5 and $6 million in increases. And I would have to say it's likely that we'll end up with $5 and $6 million cuts or flat budgets for a number of years. And so in order to do that, I've met with we all met with the school boards and we talked about this some. And I think they understand this issue, and I think we have a better chance of reaching an agreement.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to the next question. Ms. Patzloff will start this one. Edina has a large elderly population. What are your ideas about integrating the school district with that population?
I think actually we have a really unique relationship with our elderly population in Edina. 70% plus of our community do not have children in the public schools, yet we continue to show strong support for education and the Edina School District in Edina, and that is because we built that relationship. I don't think we can look at our elderly any different than you would look at a current parent of a student, because most of them have either had a child in the school district previously or have grandchildren in the school district because their kids are still here. So I think to bridge that gap is not necessarily bridging a gap, but just continuing to keep the continuity there that has been there between parent and grandparent and our relationships that we've built with them.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wallen-Friedman?
We do have a significant population that is elderly in Edina, and they have historically supported the school district. They've done so because their kids went there, or they've done so because they value education the same way the rest of us do. What's really great about our people in the Edina is they volunteer in the schools. Mm-hmm. And so that what we've done to integrate them into the schools is they come and tutor. I've worked with people on school finance who comes in and he tutors. He's retired. It's an opportunity for him to give back, and that's what we're doing to integrate. We need to keep saying and remembering these are really bright people out there. Just because they're retired doesn't mean that they're not interested in the schools and they're not willing to help out. They can tutor, they can come and give lectures on science. They're professionals. That's the way we want to integrate them.
Thank you. Mr. Berger?
The elderly in this community serve the same function that my mom and dad do for our family. When we get overloaded, overprogrammed, when the calendars don't match up, it's my mom and dad that are able to save the day. And really, the people that we have in this community, the retired, those people that have the time, they're a tremendous hidden resource, not only for mentorship and so forth, but also we talk about the changes that are happening, technological and so forth. really what we want to retain are the values that these people have. You get these kids into contact with older men who've served in World War II, served in Korea. You get them in contact with the grandparents who raised 5 or 6 kids. And it's not so much the knowledge that they pass along, it's the values that they had. For the kids to be able to see what it was like to live back then, to understand and appreciate what they have today. So the more we can do with our elderly population, the better.
Ms. Ella?
It's an interesting fact that of the people who don't have children in our schools in Edina, 55% have some connection, have either their kids went there or their grandkids, or they maybe went there years ago, which is an incredibly wonderful thing for our community. Because so many people feel a connection to our schools, they do volunteer in our schools. And Lenny has it absolutely right. If you ever go to one of the volunteer appreciation events that we have at the end of the year, celebrating everybody who gave countless hours to our students over the years, it's amazing to see how many of the people that are the volunteers are over the age of 50. And it's a wonderful thing that our seniors are giving back to our schools. And the other thing that nobody's really mentioned is community education. The school board is also responsible for the community education here, those programs, and we used to call it an E85 program, although some people who are over 85 said that wasn't quite fair. Were we going to cut off programming when they reached the age of 85? But we have classes for all
Thank you.
ages.
Okay, now we'll move on to the next question, and Mr. Wallen-Friedman will start this one, and I'm going to combine 2 questions from the audience here. What role should social media play in the curriculum in the schools in general, and how should the schools address the media's role in bullying?
I will tell you, I'm not that familiar with social media. Maybe I'm too old, but I do understand a little bit about it. Our kids are using it in the schools, and when we have wireless access, which we're getting in all the schools, they will continue to communicate that way. It is a mechanism for them to convey information relating to classes. It's a way for them to convey information that relates to getting projects done. In terms of the bullying, the district has a policy that prohibits bullying. In that area, we need to make sure that the administrators and the teachers are aware of the policy and that they're enforcing it. Whether that bullying arises in a social media network or in class, it doesn't really matter. We have an obligation to protect our students.
Mr. Berger?
The social media, it brings up a larger issue of vetting information. Okay, so the schools are going to have access to a wide variety of information. Instructors from all over the world, how are they going to do this? The internet is famous for having a lot of stuff on it that's not reliable, right? And so the schools are in an excellent position to pick this up as a role that they do well, being able to understand what information is good, what information is bad, and be able to bring it to the students. The social media, I guess I would prefer that, that they use it in a more controlled fashion. To have Facebook, to have these other outlets broad open to everything just invites bullying. There are ways to run social media within the schools, within interrelated school districts, and so forth. So there is some control that can be brought to it to make quality information available. And also, I think we have an established bullying policy. It's a little bit easier to catch this online. There are algorithms you can use to search for certain bullying activities.
Thank you. Ms. Sella?
Well, you'll be happy to know that the district has a policy on the use of social media, and it's part of our acceptable technology use policy. And I think that policy, because of the explosion in technology, runs about a good 20 pages plus appendices. But I commend it to you if you want to see every detail about it. You can find it on our website, and it's searchable by keyword. Just a plug for those of us who write policy. And we do cover that, the use of social media in the curriculum, and have some specific rules and guidelines for teachers and students to use it. But we're kidding ourselves if we think that students who think that is probably the only way to communicate with friends, more so than calling them on the phone, going over to their house, or even texting them to use social media to get their news across. We're kidding ourselves if we think that that's not going to be a force to be used in the classroom too, because it's the way the kids communicate. We also have a strong bullying policy, and our bullying policy specifically calls out the use of social media and specifically delineates that as one of the ways kids can be bullied,
Thank
and
you.
it's prohibited.
Ms. Patzloff?
Social media is a great tool. I, unlike Lenny, am a huge user of social media. Edina has a Facebook page. PCN, which I'm president of this year, has a Facebook page. This is one avenue of getting out information. I see the value in it, and actually, if you look at the statistics, the biggest numbers of Facebook users that are rising are people like us. We don't need to talk about our ages, but that is who's using this. Now, our kids are using it too, and I agree. We're crazy to think that this isn't going to happen and that bullying isn't going to take place there. But I believe as adults, teachers, parents, we need to make the message clear that there is zero tolerance for this. We will not put up with bullying in the classroom. To put our students in a situation where they're supposed to be learning and they're worrying about being bullied puts their brain into a totally different mindset where learning isn't going to take place. I absolutely believe in the policies that we have. I think they need to be enforced, and adults need to be adults
Thank
and
you.
call it out.
Okay, we'll move on to the next question. Mr. Berger will start this one. School boards must work with other local and state governments to solve education issues. How will you work collaboratively with other elected officials?
Well, I think we start, we have a lot of opportunity at the city level, sharing the same geographic area. We can work with the city to purchase or negotiate the purchase of supplies and services contracts. We can share facilities for maintenance and transportation. The school will be installing a large data processing hub at some point for this personalized learning, and the city, it would make sense for the city to rent space on that or go in with us for their data processing needs and so forth. So we have some opportunity there, and also with the state, we have something that has come up. There's sort of been some funding that's sort of been rediscovered. It's the land management dollars that come from a couple hundred years ago or so, and we can work with the state to change the way in which those lands are managed. We have been getting about $27 per pupil for this land, and that can be increased because the DOT doesn't do a great job of managing it. They don't manage it for a return on investment. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Sella?
The Edina School Board does a good job of partnering and meeting with our local city government. We have set up meetings where we meet together on a quarterly basis, the school board and the city council, to talk about the issues that we jointly face as a school district and a city. And in a lot of districts, the city and the school board do not work so closely, and they're sometimes at odds. We are not. We talk about opportunities we have together and things that we can do well together, ways that we can partner. With other government entities, we try on our school board to do the same thing. We share purchasing contracts with other government entities, and we are willing and happy to meet with all other entities, because in today's changing world, if you're not partnering with people, you're going to be left in the dust.
Thank you. Ms. Patzloff?
I think there's several ways we can do this. Some have been mentioned. Working with our city, we had a survey that came out last year in regard to our kids' chemical health, and the numbers weren't pretty, and we need to partner with the city. We have people at the district level like Janet Shank, who can then partner with somebody at the city named Kathy Iverson to work on our chemical health issues as a collaborative effort, because it isn't just the schools that can fix this problem, it's the parents and the communities and the city working together. From a legislative perspective, as we were talking about earlier, we do need to express our desires for future legislation, and I think we can do that through the school board, but also through working with the parents and the community to express those needs as well, and work with them so that as they create legislation, the outcomes are as we desire or would hope to desire for our community.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wallen-Friedman?
Well, I should be clear to everybody by now, we do partner with the city, we partner with the state. I think when we met with Margot Nash, she pointed out that we just had a copy or lease renewal, and that was all done through a state contract, and that got a far better rate for the district than it could ever get on its own. You know, Kathy mentioned that we meet quarterly with the city. These are all things that are in process. We talk about using sports facilities so that we're not duplicating. Those are all the things that we need to keep working together on.
Okay, we'll move on to the next question now, and Ms. Sella, you will start this one. Are you in favor of both referendums? Why or why not?
This is an easy one. Yes, I am in favor of both referendums, and the reason is, the first referendum, which is the $3 million or $400 per pupil per year, is money that is currently part of our operating budget. If that levy fails, that's $3 million a year that we will not have, and $3 million a year that we're going to have to cut from our budget. That's a lot of money to cut from the budget. The technology referendum is both a replacement of an existing levy and an add-on of more funds. It would be $1 million levy that we're replacing and adding $3.5 million onto that. If that levy fails, that is another $1 million of our budget, because if that levy fails, the $1 million is going to run out. So that's a total of $4 million that we are out in our budget that we are then going to have to look at ways of cutting. And I think the technology referendum for $4.5 million allows us to free up money from the general fund that we now use for technology that we could instead use for cutting classes and having more innovative programs.
Thank you. Mr. Wallen-Friedman. Oh, no, Mr. Pasloff, I'm sorry.
I'm a huge proponent of levies. The key things there, as I mentioned earlier, 70% of our budget comes from the state. When we are talking about local levies, those are local dollars under 100% local control, voted on by the local taxpayers. I think this is a great asset that we have in Edina. It's part of why our credit rating is so good. It's part of all the things that we've talked about, that we have this community-wide. Even though not everybody has kids in the school system, we continue to pass levies because we show the support for the school system. I do support these levies, but the bottom line is, as a school board member, what we need to do is, if these levies are passed, we need to be the stewards of that money. And so in the case of, say, a tech levy, that those dollars are spent as they were promised to be spent on technology.
Okay, and now Mr. Wallen-Friedman.
I absolutely support both levies. Remember, the general referendum levy is to replace existing dollars, and so if we don't pass that one, then we're going to have less money for the next year to cover the exact same costs. The tech levy is an interesting levy because it increases the amount of money that we have for technology, and you just heard all four of us talk about innovation, and all we talked about was technology. None of what we talked about is going to be possible if we don't pass that levy. The other thing that the tech levy does is there is $1.2 million that's currently in the general fund that will now be paid for by the tech levy. Those are tech dollars that the district spends. There is another $800,000 in capital expenditures that the district puts towards technology that will now roll into the tech levy. So we're actually picking up about $1 million of new tech money, but what we're doing is we're freeing up money in the general fund so that we can meet new needs, and we're freeing up money in the capital area so we can meet new needs.
Okay, and Mr. Berger.
Yes, I do support both levies. I have, from the start of my campaign, announced that I was clearly in favor of the tech levy. And I've been able to sell that to quite a few skeptical voters because I will admit being skeptical in the beginning. The record of technology and education is mixed at best. And, but I've talked to, done some work with some people that are very knowledgeable in the area. I talked to Dr. Dressen and Steve Buettner. And really, the technology is ready for prime time. This is the time to go. If we can do this properly, if we can buy the right hardware, get the right software in place, it can be a springboard to personalized learning, to integrated digital learning. And if we can do this, there are some cost savings over the long run. It does change the way in which we use our buildings, the way in which we use our resources, media, and so forth. So I think there's a great opportunity here, and I will continue to sell the tech levy.
Okay, thank you. And now we'll move on to the next question, and Ms. Pasloff will start. Did I miss somebody? No, okay. Ms. Pasloff will start this one. What role does diversity play in our curriculum?
Diversity in our curriculum. I'm not sure I know the exact answer to that question, to be perfectly honest. I have a first and a fourth grader. they've been exposed to diversity within the classroom at a very limited level in Edina, to be perfectly honest. Highlands Elementary is not the most diverse school, but I do think the openness to diversity in our schools is something that, has certainly not been shunned or taken away, even though Highlands may not be the most diverse school. How we promote that in our classrooms, to me, it should simply be that it is accepted and thank you, sorry.
That's a tough question. Mr. Wallen-Friedman.
Yeah, there are two ways of looking at that question. And so you could look at diversity in curriculum as in terms of diversity in the classroom, or you could look at diversity in terms of what's being taught as part of the curriculum. And I think that we understand, if you look at curriculum and you look at diversity in the curriculum, this is sort of an awakening to the fact that our history sometimes focused on, one segment of the population alone. And we need to understand that there are many different populations that contributed to where we are today. So if the question is diversity in the curriculum in terms of teaching about, the different people that are involved in our history and our progress, then absolutely we should be looking at that. If the question is diversity in terms of how the students interact and whether we have a diverse student population, I think our students learn more by being in a diverse environment. We live in a diverse world, and so it would help prepare them for that world.
And Mr. Berger.
I have a friend, he's a young doctor from India, and he's practicing here now, and I met with him a few days ago, and I wanted to ask him about this issue. I wanted to pull out of him if there is something like diversity or multiculturalism in India. And he sort of laughed, and he said, no, we're too busy teaching our kids algebra in the 3rd grade. So there isn't, these are the kids that we're going to be competing with, okay? I think we need to step back and look at the multicultural movement and look what it's done for this country. It has been largely a success. We live and work in a very functional, cosmopolitan society. I think diversity is just a fact of life. In my own house, I have one child who is handicapped, of course, one child who is Hispanic, and my wife roots for the Green Bay Packers. So we have lots of diversity. I think it's time to declare victory and shift the focus slightly to a different kind of diversity, and that's the diversity of learning styles. We can treat these kids all as kids and really focus on what matters, not the skin color, not where they're from, whether they're ethnic origin, but just how they learn.
Thank you. Ms. Sella.
We have about 16% students of color in our district today, and we are steadily becoming more diverse if we are looking at it in those terms. So I think our curriculum needs to reflect the students we have in our schools. As Mr. Wallen-Friedman said, we need to tell the stories of all the peoples who have contributed to the greatness of our country. And if that's what we mean by diversity in curriculum, I'm all in favor of that. If diversity in curriculum also means different learning styles, different ways of presenting information, different technologies, that's diversity too, and I am in favor of that as well. I think we have diversity, and I think we should celebrate it.
Okay. And we'll move on to the next question now, and Mr. Wallen-Friedman will start this one. Would you support finding revenue via sponsorship of school facilities such as the high school gym or I think it's Coleman Field? Why or why not?
We have already, as a district accepted, some limited advertising. And I think that to the extent that we can do it in a careful way and monitor what we're doing, my understanding, I think, is we have scoreboards that have advertising functions on them. And so to the extent that we can do that in a way that makes sense, I don't want to see a school bus that drives by that says, Edina supports Pepsi. But I think that, I think we can take a look at that, and I would like to see what people have to say about it and do a little more research, but it's certainly something to look at.
Okay, Mr. Berger.
This was part of some of the suggestions that were entered from the community at the start of the BIRD process, and they weren't picked up in the final recommendations that were given. But I think there's some merit to it. Some people suggested a broader advertising on the website, or monetizing the website, or advertising in the school in different ways. And I think there seem to be enough of those comments, and people seem to be in favor of them. So. Like Lenny said, I believe there is a way to begin to do it, to use it as a revenue, to find tasteful ways in which to allow companies to sponsor and take part in the athletic activities.
Ms. Sella?
It's clearly one of the new pots of money that all school districts are looking at, is to allow more advertising in our buildings and in our facilities. And we've wrestled with that at the school board level, wanting to not turn our noses up at any pot of revenue, but to be careful that when we are having advertising, it's not distracting from our main job, which is teaching kids and having classrooms where kids can learn. We do have, it's been mentioned, we have advertising on some of our scoreboards. We have ads in all the programs, athletic events, ads in our calendar that you get at the beginning of the year. So we are going down the road of taking money from advertising. I think the partnership we're doing with the youth athletic associations right now to hopefully refurbish the fields next to Kuhlman they're selling those pavers if you've seen them in front of Kuhlman Field, and everybody who buys a paver has to pay some amount of money, and they will collect all that money and then it will be turned over to us to refurbish those fields. That's another way that we have like a sponsorship of a facility, and I think.
Thank you. Ms. Patzloff?
Okay, if I could have been the first one on this question, it would have been much better. I come from an advertising background. This to me is not necessarily an easy question, but accepting advertising is something that we're going to need to start looking at. We're already, as Kathy mentioned, we're starting to do this. We do this in our calendar. The city does it in the magazine that we all receive. I mean, we are going to have to look at different sources of revenue. We cannot continue only looking at revenue in the way that we've looked at it before, depending on the state, only depending on local levies. We need to look for new sources. I think there are reasonable ways to accept advertising. You know, it's a simple thing as looking at the advertising that we would accept, a Cheerios versus a Pepsi, you know, whatever examples you want to look at, we can set up policy, which is something the school board can do, and guidelines to accept that. But if there's new revenue that is going to help our students, I think we need to take that seriously and look at it.
Okay. And this will be the last question now, and Mr. Berger will start it. How important is staff development?
Staff development. Well, it's part of maintaining the professionalism of the teaching core. We talk about technology or new methods of learning, and it's budgeted into the tech levy, by the way, but there's a large amount of money money and time that's going to have to be spent on staff development, new ways of being able to access this information and so forth. I think Edina does a good job at this, and it's something we can continue.
Okay. Ms. Sella?
Staff development is critically important, and it's in fact one of the 4 goals of the technology referendum is to empower, enhance excellent teaching, and I think that is part of the mission and strategy of the Edina schools. We cannot throw new technology and new curriculum at teachers without giving them the tools, the training, and the time to become proficient and excellent users of those, and so I think it's critically important.
Okay. Ms. Patzloff?
Staff development is also just a part of keeping their licensure up to date. And yes, we need to support our teachers in this. As Kathy said, as part of the referendum, part of those dollars are actually not going to be just going to equipment and infrastructure, but to teacher training so that they can better utilize a lot of the tools that we talked about tonight. Being able to know how to build a website for their classroom, to disseminate information to their parents, to create podcasts. We need to be committed to doing this, but we also need to be able to do it in more efficient ways. And one of the things that we've seen the teachers talk about is working amongst themselves to self-train each other. We have teachers who are highly developed at certain things, and they can share that with other teachers. So finding time for our teachers to be able to gather and work together as well is another great efficient way to keep their training.
And Mr. Friedman.
I agree that staff development is critical. Just sit down one day and talk to a teacher that's been teaching in our district for 25 years. Those are excellent teachers. Ask them what their world would be like as a teacher today if they had no development and they were teaching the way they did 20 years ago. That's just not acceptable. We have a world that changes on a day-to-day basis where entering into this tech levy. Hopefully, we're entering into it. Hopefully, you'll all vote for it. And that has a staff development piece. We need to develop and keep our teachers current. It is a changing world, and they need to be assisted in keeping pace.
Okay. That's all the time we have for questions. We did have a number of questions that we were not able to ask, so if you do want to ask those questions to the candidates, I hope that they will stay afterwards. And we will now move on to the candidate's closing statement, and this will again be in the reverse order of the opening statements. And Ms. Sella, you will start.
Thank you, League of Women Voters, for sponsoring this forum tonight. It was a good opportunity to discuss the issues that are critical to our Edina community. I care very deeply about the Edina schools, and you can tell from the amount of time I've spent on school issues and committee work over the last 23 years, including the last 4 years as a member of the school board, that I don't say that lightly. I put my time where my priorities are, and the Edina schools are one of my top priorities. My years of practicing law and serving on nonprofit boards give me strong experience in the skills a school board needs: financial management, strategic planning, and the ability to work collaboratively with groups with divergent views. As the only incumbent running for re-election, I also have 4 years of hands-on involvement with our school's issues and challenges, especially in the nitty-gritty of finance and policy. The knowledge, experience, and perspective I've gained over these past 4 years will bring continuity to the board and help our district meet the significant challenges of the next 4 years. I ask for your vote on November 8th and your vote for the 2 referendum questions. Thank you.
Okay, and Mr. Berger.
I want to thank the League of Women Voters for organizing this debate, Dr. Dressen and his staff for their openness and helping us, bringing us up to speed, to the citizens of Edina for considering my candidacy, and to my fellow candidates for their collegiality. I've been enjoying getting to know the superintendent, the board members, and the voters, and they're impressive people, and this is a fantastic school district. I believe we're all facing a great deal of uncertainty in the next several years due to economic challenges, the deepening of competitive global forces. As always, these same challenges will bring the seeds of our salvation, so to speak. Drastically tighter budgets will force us to think even further outside the box, and the greater connectedness that brings us sharp competition will also bring the best educational resources in the world with a click of a button. This school district is the best led and best staffed in the state, and one of the best in the nation. I believe it will come through these difficult times, and we will continue to lead the state and the nation.
Thank you. And Mr. Wallen-Friedman?
Thank you again to the League for sponsoring this forum, and to all of you who showed up to support us and to show your interest in education. I'm excited about the opportunity to increase my involvement in the school district. I've worked hard for the last 10 years. I've watched my kids develop. I am passionate about teaching. I'm passionate about education. I'm passionate about getting our kids so that they are lifelong learners. Our goal is not to teach them things. Our goal is to teach them to learn and teach them to enjoy learning. My goals for the district include keeping our children excited, working on the district's new strategic plan, incorporating technology and fiscal responsibility. With that said, I don't have preconceived notions of what exactly we're going to go. I'm here to listen to people, get input from administrators, community, teachers, and make the decisions that are best for our children. Thank you very much.
Okay, and Ms. Patzloff.
I too want to I've thanked the League of Women Voters, but I want to thank you for coming tonight. You know, there's 4 candidates, there's 3 seats open, and I don't think you have an easy choice ahead of you. A child's education is one of a parent's greatest concerns in life, and I'm passionate about our schools and our community, and that's why we moved here. I believe the quality of a community is really directly tied to the quality of its education. I know my attention to detail, my background in communications, and my desire and ability to ask the questions are going to be an asset to the school board. Anybody who knows me will tell you that I really want to fully understand an issue before I make a decision on it, and that I like to consider all of the various options. I've never been a big fan of sticking to the concept of, well, that's the way it's always been done, so that's the way we got to continue to do it. Change can be a good thing, and it's often necessary. I believe I can bring balance to the board too and be a strong voice for parents of elementary age students, parents whose kids have been in choice programs or neighborhood
Thank
school
you.
programs.
Oh, thank you. Okay,
Sorry.
please remain seated as we conclude our forum this evening. I'd like to thank the candidates for participating tonight and for their willingness to participate in the democratic process by running for public office. Thank you to the League of Women Voters of Edina for sponsoring the forum. You can view this forum and the referendum presentation by Superintendent Dressen on the Edina City website under Watch a Program, or watch a rebroadcast on the Edina City Channel 16 at the following times through Monday, November 7th. The referendum presentation will be on Mondays at 10:30 in the morning, Thursdays at 1 in the afternoon, and Saturdays at 12:30 p.m. And the LWV candidate forum will be on Sundays at 6 o'clock, Tuesdays at 6 o'clock, and Thursdays at 6 o'clock. And those are all in the evening. For more information on voting and the candidates, please visit the League of Women Voters of Minnesota election website at vote.lwvmn.org. Thank you for attending tonight's forum, and please remember to vote on Tuesday, November 8th. Now, please join me in thanking the candidates.